Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on the 4th of May. Yes, coming to you live at 8 a.m. every single morning. It's your best way to start your day up to date with all the important sporting information news, is what I meant to say. Deary me, stumbling over my words. Haven't had enough coffees yet. That's the problem. But welcome to New Zealand Sports Radio. You can watch live on the Facebook page, or you can listen via the recording via our podcast. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio. And in news today, we have, will the EPL be in Australia? No hibernation for New Zealand cricket. Impey threatens to pull out of World Rugby. Warriors could yet host home games this season. And the Game of Thrones star lifts new record heights. No, lifts records to new heights, sorry. Deary me. Let's get on with the football news. And yes, there is a suggestion that the English Premier League could be hosted in Perth, Australia, or in Western Australia. There had already been talk that they would be using neutral grounds rather than all the grounds and just have 10 grounds rather than the full 20. But if they go to Australia, then obviously we'd be looking at even less than that. I think it is perhaps a bit of a wild suggestion that they'll go to Australia, but you never know how these things might happen during these unprecedented COVID-19 times. One team that would be unhappy with this would be Brighton. Their chairman has come out and said that it would threaten the integrity of the competition if the games were not played at home, even if they were played without the crowds at the games. He's not been the only one to come out. West Ham have also mentioned that they weren't they weren't totally happy, but they were not as forthright as the Brighton and Hove Albion are. Both those sides, funnily enough, are in a relegation scrap at the moment. So every single piece of advantage they can get to help them, they really do want. So we'll see how that all pans out. We've had people breaking ranks there with the Premiership situation and how they're looking at doing things. Heading over to the Belarusian Premier League, we had 4 games overnight. First off, Belashina were beaten by Dynamo Brest at home 0-3. So congratulations to Ashwin's team there. That sees them climb up to 9th in the table. And for those of you watching on Facebook, we have the table up on screen now for you. Verbitsk lost to Slavia 2-3. Bate beat the visiting Neymar Gordon 3-1. And Shakator beat Isok 4-0. That means at the end of this round, after 7 games have been played, that Slutsk, my team, at top the table, closely followed by 2 points behind is Torpedo, which is Stephen from the Deep South's team, and Bate, who got that win over Nemel Groda in 3rd place. They're all the ones in the European places for or the chance of getting to European competitions. It's then a bit of a logjam with only 2 points. You've got Energex in 4th on 12 points, all the way down to Gordia in 10th place, which is Stevens from the Finals team on 10 points. And then you've got 3 more teams on 9 points behind them there, so Dynamo Minsk. So it is really, really tight between 14th all the way up to, well, basically second in the table. There is no gaps in points. The bottom 2, Smolovic and Belashina, are a bit off the pace. There's a 5-point gap already opened up to those two. So those two looking like relegation favourites at this time. They haven't won any games, either of them, so far. They've had a few draws, but no wins so far for them. That gets you up to date with your football news. And I will now hand you over to Ashwin, who will take us through our cricket update.
Good morning, Paul, and good morning to everybody out there in the start of a lovely week. And as mentioned by Paul in the headlines, no hibernations for New Zealand cricket this year. Normally, as the domestic season winds down, New Zealand cricket obviously starts to take a little bit of a backward steps and take a bit of a breather. But this year, last Thursday, they got into a bit of planning for what's going to happen post-COVID-19 and what's going to happen, what the season next year is going to look like. So they have devised about 4 scenarios, but David White's a bit tight-lipped about what those scenarios might be. But there was one thing that he basically confirmed, is that the season would start as scheduled in October. That's a normal start date for New Zealand cricket. The worst case scenario would see no internationals at home, and that would mean also that there would be no Women's One Day International World Cup that was planned for February next year either. The plans around that, if that does happen, by the sounds of it, as I said, he's been quite tight-lipped, is that they'll have a sort of all-stars series where they'll just utilise local players to come up with a, I suppose, north-south series, etc. Now, moving on to Australia, where Usman Khawaja, who missed out on his Cricket Australia contract, has fired back some shots. Shots fired. He has accused Cricket Australia with financial mismanagement of the game in Australia. Concerns all round that the CA look to be in real financial trouble if there's no international matches held in the coming summer season. There's general disbelief that the CA is in this financial situation, and many players and states are dubious or not in high regard of CA's financial forecasts. Seems to be a common theme amongst a few sports in terms of the money, the coffers seem to be quite bare. And I think there will be, out of this tragedy, or not tragedy so much, but this pandemic, I should say, a review of governance structures that sort of, particularly around financial matters. Moving into the ECB realm, and that's back into England, and Ebony Rainford Brent feels that it's more feasible to get the women's game up and running in the UK than the men's game. There are fewer teams required to get a competition going, so there's fewer players required. She believes logistically it'll be much easier to get it up and running. For example, total numbers to get a women's game up and running would be about 30 versus the men's game. Rainford Brent is optimistic all plans could go ahead if the government loosens the restrictions that they currently have in place around COVID-19. And that, Paul, is our cricket news for Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. That's a small number of people needed for a game. If you remember, we were talking about the Bundesliga happening behind closed doors. They were talking they still needed 300 people to host a single game. So only 30 required for a women's cricket game. Shows you just how much less infrastructure and how much less support they get than some of those football teams.
Yeah, basically, you're looking about 22 players for the two teams. Obviously, a couple of umpires and a scorer, really, and that's basically about it. And then a physio for each team. That sort of, as you say, the funding's not there to have the big bloat of a physio per player, and all that goes with the men's game. So it logistically looks like it'd be a lot easier to get the women's game up and running. This is all, as I said, all dependent on what the government allows them to do.
Obviously, yep, very, very true. And let's head over now to Stephen from the Far North, who will take us through our birthdays.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody. Yes, it is the start of a new week, but there are some birthdays this morning. First of all, a dual oval ball international, a black cap, and a New Zealand Māori, and that's where we're going to start. Otere Black, born on the 4th of May 1995, is a New Zealand rugby union player who currently plays at First Five for Manawatu in the Mitre 10 Cup and the Blues in Super Rugby. Black has also appeared for the Hurricanes in Super Rugby between 2015 and 2017. Black, who is 25 today, also played for both New Zealand Māori at international level and the New Zealand under-20s at age group. Moving on, Paul John Wiseman, born the 4th of May 1970, is a former New Zealand cricketer. Known as the Absolute Battler, he bowled right-arm spin and was also a right-handed batsman. Wiseman, who turns 50 today, played 25 matches, scoring 366 runs at an average of 14. He took 66 wickets at an average of 47.59, his best figures being 5 for 82. And finally, Leslie Paya Imuli Vanikolo, born the 4th of May 1979, is a former professional league and a union player. A dual code international, he has played for New Zealand Kiwis in Rugby League and England in Rugby Union. Vanikolo, who turns 41 today, played a wing or centre and made 15 appearances for the New Zealand Kiwis between 1998 and 2005. He played 5 rugby union tests for England during the Six Nations Championship in 2005. And just a quick note, it is International Star Wars Day today, folks, wherever you are around in the world. So may the 4th be with you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And may the 4th be with you too. Happy birthday to all those people. Let's hope they have a lovely cake in their shutdown, in their bubbles today. Moving on then to rugby union news. And as we mentioned yesterday, Bill Beaumont has been voted in as the chairman for the next 4 years of World Rugby. Brett Impey gave an interview yesterday. He is the chairman of New Zealand Rugby, and he made this statement that that we needed to see definite change from Bill Beaumont, or New Zealand Rugby might not be in World Rugby in 4 years' time. That is a very big statement to make, and sounds like New Zealand Rugby is threatening to pull out of World Rugby and go it alone, or go it with their SANZAR partners. That would be a major schism in obviously in the rugby world. And I say that is obviously a very, very big threat that's been thrown there. We'll see how much publicity that gets, or whether it's one of those ones that just gets brushed under the carpet quietly for political purposes. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Clearly, a lot of bad feeling going around in some rugby circles about how the vote went. I know a lot of people in the Americas are not happy with the way that Canada voted, for example. We'll be covering all of that in the Hash Rugby Chat Show on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. So join myself, Stephen and John for that discussion. Also, if you're interested in rugby, then at 2 p.m. today, I have a fantastic interview with Gainline Analytics. We'll be talking about how they look at rugby, and actually all sports. But we have some interesting insights around the structure of New Zealand rugby and why it has been so successful over the past sort of couple of decades. So do check that out at 2 p.m. today. I'm going to hand you over now back to Stephen, who'll take us through our league update.
Thanks again, Paul. It's all about the Warriors this morning. The New Zealand Warriors could yet play host to NRL games this season, while the expectation is that the Warriors will be based in Australia for the entire NRL season, as the competition pushes for resumption on May 28th after being postponed due to COVID-19 pandemic. Their hope remains that rugby league could return to Mount Smart Stadium in 2020. The Warriors, who left for Tamworth yesterday to begin their 14-day quarantine after being granted travel exemption to continue the NRL season before moving to the Central Coast, where they will be based. Now, that could be for the remainder of the season, but Australian Rugby League Commission Peter V'landys has given a glimmer of hope to the Auckland-based fans that the possibility of games being played in New Zealand at some point in the season will extend all the way until the end of October. Now, let's hope that actually happens. And speaking of things happening, well, there was some very emotional scenes at the Auckland airport yesterday as the Warriors boarded their flight for Australia, returning to start the NRL season. The decision to relocate to Tamworth comes at a hefty personal cost, having to head away without their families and possibly not being able to see them until October. The players are set to undergo a 14-day quarantine once they arrive in Tamworth before moving to that Central Coast base. One image on Instagram yesterday showed how tough it will be, with Adam Blair's partner Jess snapping an image of Adam hugging and saying goodbye to his son Taika at the airport. However, Warriors CEO George Cameron told the New Zealand Herald that negotiations were already underway to enable players' families into Australia. That has been a priority for us. It has been non-negotiable with the NRL, and that is my personal commitment to the club, George said. Not every family could go, and some don't want to go. All families are different. Some want to go a bit later, some want to go for the duration. Now, George also confirmed that these are ongoing negotiations with the Australian and New South Wales government for family members to travel to Australia, because like the players, they will basically also have to go into a 14-day quarantine if they are to get to see the rest of their families, or if they are able to travel. So there we go. That's it for pretty much for league news this morning, Paul. See you tomorrow.
Well, just before you go, well, we're going to have a quick update from Shane, who is our friend on the ground in Tamworth. And let's see if the technical issues need, we can get his voice on.
For their
Sorry again.
The feedback I'm getting from the Warriors' visit to Tamworth for their isolation hub and training is very good. I certainly know somebody that's been involved with rugby league for the last 3 years locally, how important rugby league clubs are to the community and their supporters. So the Warriors will be very welcome, and they will be very well looked after by the West Tamworth Leagues Club. There'll be plenty of space for them to have meals, plenty of space to do their indoor training, outdoor training. Scully Park, home of many great West Tamworth Rugby League victories over the years, particularly over the North Tamworth, certainly is behind there. A great rugby league ground, as well as Ken Chillingworth Oval just across the road, the home of the Mighty Pirates Rugby Club. So there's plenty of space to train, plenty of space to do things. We really welcome them with open arms. We can't physically be there for them, but it's my hope that they'll go on and have a great season, and I wish Stephen Kearney and his side all the very best of luck. And I wish all the backroom staff well as well, and stay strong, everybody. The NRL's coming back.
So yeah, that's our update from Shane, who is
I'm getting
Whoops.
from the Warriors' visit.
So there we go. That's our update from Shane, who lives in Tamworth, and who is obviously they're going to be welcome there very well. And it looks like they have got a couple of grounds they can use over there, as well as indoor facilities as well. Moving on now to other sports news, and so you'll know him as Sir Gregor the Mountain Cleggan, but his real name is here we go. Hafthor Bjornsson he has broken the world deadlift record. He has lifted a mammoth 501 kgs to break that record. The deadlift is where you don't have to lift it above your head. You just have to block your knees out and hold it for 2 seconds. I say just. That is still a massive weight that he has managed to lift there. He is a previous world strongest man as well. And to give you an idea as to quite how big a feat this is, when Britain, Eddie Hall lifted 500 kgs in 2006, he had nosebleeds and also passed out from lifting that weight. To give you an idea, in other measurements, that's around about the 80 stone kind of weight is how much he's lifted. So yes, congratulations there to Sir Gregor in his new world record. Moving over to the USA, and the NFL is looking like it's going to be on course to begin its season on time in September. They're perhaps one of the luckiest sports around, in the fact that they tied up their last season in February, just before the coronavirus caused lockdown and disruption. And it looks like they will be able to kick off on the 10th of September on time, with the Super Bowl happening in Tampa on February the 7th. Now, clearly, whether there'll be fans or not, and what structure the league will take, has still not been announced. But they have said there will not be a plethora of Saturday games. I think there'll be, obviously, ESPN will still be wanting its normal slots, so that it gets obviously as much content out to fans as it can do. To give you an idea as to quite how pent up the demand for sports is, the draft attracted a record 55 million viewers in the US, which is 16% growth on 2019, apparently. So clearly there is a lot of people missing their sport and wanting to see it come back. Finally, the European Road Race Championships have been postponed this year. and will not take place in 2020, and instead will be moved to 2021. But the Italian province of Trento will still remain as the host. It'll just be happening 1 year later there. They're still working, obviously, on how the 2021 calendar will look, but the 1st to 5th of September or the 8th to 12th of September are looking like the most likely dates for those races. That brings you up to date with all of the important news. Don't forget, the long talk will be happening today at 2 p.m. It will be happening at 2 p.m. every single day. We've got some great names lined up this week, including international volleyball players. We have head coaches and in there, as well as, I say, that game line analytics talk. Also, hopefully getting one of these sports CEOs on as well. So canoe racing for that one. Don't forget, also on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m, Rugby Chat will be taking place, and there we will be talking about all those changes that are happening. We'll also be talking about New Zealand Rugby's finances and its and how Super Rugby will look. On Wednesday evening, we have the Do You Know Sports quiz, and then Ashwin, you will be hosting on Thursday evening, Swinging from the Hip. Do you know what topics will be coming up in that one?
Look, obviously there's a few days to go under the bridge, so to speak, until Thursday. But what we're hoping to get on is somebody who's more familiar with Pakistani cricket and can enlighten us a bit more on the Umar Akmal situation and what goes on in Pakistan cricket in terms of disciplinary matters. So
looking at having a special guest there on Thursday evening at 8 p.m, an expert bringing you up to date with all of those pieces. So keep it dialed. Don't forget to like the Facebook page, New Zealand Sports Radio, or if you prefer to listen as you drive around town or do the housework, then do subscribe to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Acast, all of your favorite podcatchers. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio. Have a safe day. Have a great day. You've started it the best way.